Welcome, innovators, business owners, entrepreneurs, technology experts, academia, government R&D communities, and members of the North Carolina innovation ecosystem. This is Defense Technology Talks, hosted by the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office, or NC DefTech. This podcast will showcase various technologies with local and national experts who aim to solve complex national security problems. In the coming weeks, we will highlight North Carolinians with the potential to, or those that have positively contributed to enhancing the capabilities of our warfighters, law enforcement, and first responders. We will also feature government leaders in research and development who have helped shape the future in this domain. These podcasts are just one of the many free services provided by the North Carolina government to assist the North Carolina innovation ecosystem to thrive and provide solutions to our nation. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rob Robinson from the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office, and this is a small business showcase for Defense Technology Talks. We have Kelly Houston here. Kelly has a very, very interesting technology. We've talked to him before in different arenas, and we've done a lot of face-to-face discussion, but this is the first time of him coming onto the podcast to tell you a little bit more about his technology. I don't want to steal too much of his thunder, but I will plug it at the beginning as well as at the end. We are having the Federal Construction Summit next week, the 13th of April. So Friday the 13th, usually a bad day, but it's not going to be a bad day if you're in the construction space. And so I would encourage you to come out to the summit in Wilmington. But without further ado, we'll pass it over to Kelly to give him the opportunity to introduce himself, talk a little bit about his company, and then we'll dive in a little bit deeper into his technology and have a quick discussion about what's going on in his world. But without further ado, I'll pause and pass it over to Kelly, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate the call. And I wanted to see how much I might be able to help DoD in the area of contaminated water. I'm the patent holder of Aerosolization Equity Investments, which is an on-site aerosolization of all chemically, biologically, and radiologically contaminated water. The technology is also very effective on algae.
Yeah, and so if you don't understand what contaminated water is, and again, it seems crazy, but there's so many different types of contaminants that do happen to water. And so one of the most common ones that you hear about, like if you're in the military at all, you've probably gotten a text message, a phone call, and a spam email talking about the Camp Lejeune water stuff. And nothing that we can do about that now because that's in the past, but to prevent that in the future, that's one of the things that Kelly's technology can do. And the other part of it is like PFAS, and you see it particularly here in North Carolina, there's a lot of work being done in developing PFAS removal. There's commercial every time I turn on YouTube or on the weekends about how North Carolina is trying to abate PFAS in and around facilities. And that stuff is very, very dangerous. But to talk more about your government problem, what are you looking to do as far as trying to integrate your technology into the Department of Defense?
Well, what we're looking to do is work directly with POCs and other decision makers in the contaminated water space. So if it's installations or PFAS, protecting the domestic supply chains, fuel spills, any type of contaminated water. If it's chemical or biological, it's going to clump. Now, who knows the science of aerosolization? Well, DoD happens to be the world's expert on all areas of all aspects of aerosolization. It comes out of the CBRN world and the medical community. So it's simply a technology that is being transferred from the medical professions over to the civil engineering professions. So aerosolization would be a very large sneeze or cough that we just happen to use equipment, and that equipment is very mobile and modular and cost effective. And so that way we can use it all over a given facility, or we can move it out if it needs to be done in the field.
Yeah, I find that's fascinating because, again, that's an interesting way to describe it. I think that's the first time you mentioned it as aerosolization as like a cough or a sneeze. And so being able to remove contaminants from, a liquid substance is very, very important. When you start talking about gray water, black water management within an installation, and because it's portable, that also increases the opportunity for success within a military mission set, because one of the things that we have to start considering is operating out of austere or reduced support facilities. And one of the byproducts, and I know this because I've talked to you before, but one of the byproducts of your process is the ability to enhance a water purification operation. Could you talk about that a little bit and kind of enlighten people, maybe not so much in the science behind it, but what are the big moving parts of how the aerosolization works and what are the byproducts that you can use as far as military missions or other missions are concerned?
Yeah, thank you. That's so my part of the equation is handling the contaminated water. So anywhere the DoD might go, there's going to be all kinds of different contaminated waters. It might be in the field, it might be contaminated through operations. Either way, that can be handled. The my byproduct is colossal amounts of local clean humidity. And I think it was about 2016 or 2017, DoD started testing and evaluating atmospheric water generators. So a piece of equipment, maybe the size of a usual gen set, that would be able to make, let's say, 200 gallons of drinking water a day. Well, in working in concert with them, if I increase the local humidity, perhaps 30, 35, 40%, then they're able to possibly double their production. So now we have twice as much drinking water from the same equipment. And at the same time, we're getting rid of the contaminated water and making it useful to the troops on the ground.
Now, with that contaminated water, I know it's not going to be potable once it's done, or is it? Or does it just make it easier for you to make potable water using the water purification?
The big picture is give me 10 million gallons of contaminated water and we make it into maybe it's 20, 30, or 40,000 gallons of sludge. So it's a dewatering in place system. So the problem is usually the volume that they're having to deal with. It's a very large pond or pool of water, and we can concentrate that and make it much more manageable. In the meantime, it's called dewatering in place, and that's where the process naturally cleans the contamination out of it by clumping the contamination, putting it back into the pond where it came from, and liberating the clean water as vapor.
Yeah, and that's super super interesting. And then again, that kind of ties into the commercial aspects of that as well. So it may not just be for a military operation. You know, when you look at natural disasters or areas that are remote that don't have a clean water source, or even if you have a water source that may not be 100% the best source of water, like it's not pure, like a well or surface water somewhere, you know, or a contaminated lake or something to that effect. You know, from a commercial standpoint, are there any kind of commercial opportunities that you're looking to get involved with or that you're attacking, or if you've commercialized this at all?
We've started with our approvals on the private sector side, but I really want to take it back to DoD first, where the technology was first proven. I have a personal connection to it because my father, Dr. Colonel William E. Houston, in USAMRIID and Aberdeen Proving Grounds, started doing the testing for this and physically measure in real time the aerosolization process, and that's when they moved everything over to dissemination, which is dry. They dried out like talcum powder in the seaburn world because the clumping was too pronounced in the areas of aerosolization. So if the technology doesn't work for the purposes of spreading chemicals and biologicals, it clumps them. So now we can use that same process that DoD knows very, very well to be able to handle the contaminated water problems that are on installations and perhaps in the field.
Yeah, well, that's great, and I understand that your heart is with the Department of Defense because I think it's really, it's really important. Again, like that future mission set of the big four, transnational terrorism. We usually have a good advantage going in, and usually have host countries that are willing to help support with the water and water purification. But when you start talking about, fighting, the bigger forces that are in the news, North Korea, China, Russia, Iran, when you start getting into those more austere conditions, you need something portable to produce water, to make it at least at the minimum potable, if not drinkable. And so I think with your system and some of the other systems that are currently in the military, like you can never have enough water when there's a chem bio threat. And I think that's one of the things that we always have to consider when you start attaching senators, you start attaching all of the decontamination apparatus that the Army has, then you need water to do all that stuff. And if you don't have at least potable water to help remove some of those contaminants, your process can at least expedite getting some of that water back into the fight after it's been utilized for a decontamination mission at a large scale.
Yes.
So
and one
the
of
next
the
question,
biggest. Yeah. One of the biggest
No, go ahead.
areas of that DoD might find value is it frees up the budgets that are already allocated for dealing with contaminated water towards other more mission focused areas. So dealing with contaminated water is decades old, very expensive and it's labor intensive processes that can now be done in a very cheap, efficient, and fast way. That money that can be reallocated within the same budget cycle to be able to go towards mission focused areas.
Yeah. So then the next question that I have to ask is summit participation. So you're going to be at the summit this year, which is next Friday. Just again, quick plug for that. Are you participated in the summit last year as well? So if you're thinking about coming, or if you're not sure about coming, you need to register like today because we're running out of time. And by the time this gets posted, it may be too late for you to get to the summit because we're looking to have a very large venue and we're sitting between 700 and 800 people that are going to be at the summit. So you're going to miss out on an opportunity. However, for you as a person that attended the summit last year, what's some pointers or something that people should know about attending the summit that would be helpful to their business and why should they come?
Thank you. I got to tell you, I had not just a good time last year, it was very effective. So I met a lot of very important people that were able to help and move the company along, but also find out what they're looking for in the areas that I can help. So the contaminated water world, there were a lot of people's infrastructure and environment, and they were able to guide me over the last year for submitting for different government BAAs or different programs. And this year I'm a presenter. So last year I went as an attendee. This year as a presenter and with a booth. And I think it's a very good use of your time.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment because again, and that's kind of how the cycle goes. As your business grows, then you have to create more opportunities for yourself. So again, maybe it's the first time as you come in as an attendee because that's the best thing for your company at the time. And then advance like we have to this year, where you have a great opportunity to participate and bring more to the table, and not because of any other reason than one, you understand the environment a little bit better, but the other part of it is like you actually had to compete for this. And so if you are not a member of DefTech, one of the things that we do is our defense technology scouting program, which is called TIDE. So it's technology, innovation, demonstration, and experimentation. And so what we are trying to do is we're trying to build a pipeline of technologies, particularly here in North Carolina, to bring them to the military organizations that are in that are in our footprint. And so part of being a member of the TIDE is the quad chart. And the quad chart is very important. And part of it is to coach newer businesses in the small business space on how to effectively communicate with the government. But the other part of it is getting you to rehearse your pitch. And rehearsing your pitch over and over and over again is a key to success. And sometimes you'll have 5 minutes, sometimes you'll have an hour. And it depends on what audience you're talking to. If you're talking to a government official that is here for an event like the summit, they're probably going to have 3 to 5 minutes to listen to your pitch. If you're going in front of a venture capital group or a private capital group, you may have 40 minutes to pitch your technology and about 20 minutes for questions. But again, being effective in your communication is highly important. And so to wrap this thing up, as to not to go too much further into this, and not because we don't want to have the conversation, but because we want to save some of Kelly's energy and focus for the summit next week, but I'm going to highlight the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office Innovation Corner. So Jeff Tech is going to be doing an Innovation Corner at the exhibits in the Wilmington Summit. So it's the Southeast Regional Federal Construction Infrastructure and Environmental Summit in Wilmington. And that's where we're going to be. And one of the things that we're going to be providing is all of the technology that has been submitted through the TIDE. We down selected to 5 different companies, and those 5 companies are one, Kelly Houston's of Aerosolization Equity Investments LLC. And again, he's got an on-site aerosolization process. And again, the short conversation that we just had is not going to do it justice. So the 2 things that you can do is one, come to the summit and talk to Kelly. And the other part of it is get around to having a demo so you can actually see the technology in use. So you have a better understanding of how it goes. Because sometimes it's not easy to understand from a PowerPoint or from an initial discussion. And so it requires follow-ups. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing the Innovation Corner. So Kelly is going to be pitching from 9:30 to 9:45. We're going to be at booth 133 in the exhibit hall. So he's going to be pitching from 9:30 to 9:45, from 10:15 to 10:30. We have advanced materials manufacturing, and Dr. Rabani is going to be there. She's going to be talking about her technology, which is very, very fascinating. We've got 360 Ballistics with Richard Christoph, and they're going to be talking about their shoot house from 10:30 to 10:45. 11:15 to 11:30. We have US UV Clean. That's a crazy company, and they're recent additions to the DefTech network. And again, a lot of this stuff, great on paper, better in person. And then the other part of it is we have Boomerang Water LLC, and they have a water bottling system. So all these companies are going to be there. The Innovation Corner information is going to be associated with all the North Carolina Military Business Center paperwork and documentation, but we will drop that into the podcast description so you know who's going to be there and why. And then the last question that I will ask you today, Kelly, is there any other thing that we need to know about? Where can we find information about your company, and where should we look online to get more info?
I appreciate that. I really look forward to next week, seeing everybody again, and also meeting a lot of new friends. My company is at www.aerosolization.com. So aerosolization.com.
And thanks for that. And again, I will put all this in the podcast description. Kelly, it's always awesome to talk to you. We appreciate your time today. And again, this was a little bit longer than some of the sound bites that we're going to be doing at the event. We'd love to grab you at the summit as well, just to get your initial impressions and do a follow-up with you. But again, the follow-ups are just as important as the initial conversation. That's why we do these podcasts, to kind of put the information out there, start getting people excited about what is going on. But the other part of it is to ensure that all of our companies, whether it be somebody that submitted for Tide or somebody that's just thinking about joining the DefTech network, gets the best opportunity to showcase their technology in front of the government, whether that be in the DoD, DHS, or any of the other organizations that the government is associated with. Here is your chance to submit and have the best opportunity to win. All that being said, I'm Rob Robinson, the host of Defense Technology Talks. This has been a small business showcase, and we will talk to you guys next time, and looking forward to meeting some of you next week at the summit. And that's all we have for this week, and we will talk to you soon. Have a happy Easter. Thanks. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Defense Technology Talks, hosted by the North Carolina Defense Technology Transition Office, or DefTech. The views expressed in this broadcast are solely those of the individual contributors. As indicated, DefTech does not take responsibility for those statements or opinions and accepts no responsibility or liability for any inaccuracy or omissions reported during this program. The content and interviews are fair use for instructional purposes and to build awareness for the North Carolina innovation ecosystem. The full version of this presentation has been uploaded to our Mobilize platform. Mobilize is just another free service provided to you to access more national security and business collaboration opportunities. You can sign up for more information at deftech.nc.gov. Join us soon for the next podcast coming to a platform near you. DefTech is a subsidiary of the North Carolina Military Business Center and receives its support from Fayetteville Technical Community College.